A lot can happen in a week. Some of it good, some of it bad, some of it downright ugly. When faced with intriguing developments in the week's news, we turn to a rotating panel of non-experts to parse the good, the bad, and the ugly of it all. On today's panel, Jessica Brown, co-director of Station Theater, Natalie Arsenault, president of Arsenault International Consulting, and Raul Ramos, associate professor of history at the University of Houston. Jessica, Natalie, Raul, welcome to Houston Matters.
Thank you, Craig.
Hi, Craig.
Panel, as we learned Wednesday, Houston-based Chevron plans to lay off 15 to 20% of its global workforce by the end of next year. That's 6,000 to 8,000 jobs. It's not known which ones or how many here in the greater Houston area. Chevron employs 7,000 people here, 6,000 of them who work downtown. The oil giant recently relocated its global headquarters here from California. Employees were reportedly told during an internal town hall they can opt for buyouts now into the spring. Among the challenges the number 2 oil producer in America faces, cost overruns, a delayed overseas oil field project, a court battle with rival ExxonMobil over Chevron's proposed purchase of Hess, and an anticipation of lower oil prices in the next 2 years as global supply is expected to outpace demand. Chevron, facing some budgetary challenges, is planning to let go of thousands of workers by the end of next year. Is this good, bad, or ugly? Natalie Arsenault, start us off.
Well, it's probably mixed, right? It is bad because people are about to lose their jobs, right? That's never a good thing. And there's a lot of adjustments that have to happen because of that in people's personal lives and with families and things of that nature. But for the people who are, eventually going to lose their jobs, those who don't choose not to take buyouts, which is also still a form of losing your job just with an incentive, I just want to tell them, I encourage them to look at it as an opportunity for them to find the next best thing, right? Like sometimes we get a little complacent with where we are and, our skills start to stagnate and things like that. While it's never fun to be the person who's being released, and it's sometimes hard to put a silver lining on it, try to get into the mindset of, this is an opportunity for me to see where my skills need to grow, but then also where I can contribute to something else that has space for me to bring my skills to, right? So that's the first thing. The other thing is, when you start to look at the forecast, and first of all, this is kind of cyclical for the industry, right? So, supply, demand, all sorts of things go into it, right? And so, every few years you have this hiring frenzy in the oil and gas industry and then this layoff frenzy in the oil and gas industry.
Boom, bust, boom, bust.
There you go.
Yep.
And so that's kind of where we are now. I think it was just 2020 when Chevron released 700 people from from their Houston offices. So it's not great, but also creates opportunity. So that's the bad part. The good part, though, is that the other 40,000-ish people will get to keep their jobs. It's part of the cycle of life. Companies, for lack of better phrase and better word, they will always put profit over people, right? They have to stay in business. Their job is to stay in business. And so when they start to look at the markets and all of the factors that are in the markets and how that's going to affect their ability to turn a profit, they have to make tough decisions, and it sometimes affects people. It often affects people because real estate and people are the two easiest levers that create the biggest profit margin for them to be able to recover cost, right? To recover cost. So yeah, so it's good, it's bad. I don't think it's ugly though. I think it's just good and bad.
All right. Good, bad, or ugly, Raul Ramos.
Overall, it's bad. Nobody wants to lose their job. I think just from personal experience, I'm seeing at least 5 different neighbors just on my block alone are affected either through Hess or through Chevron. Houston is still dominated by the energy sector, and when these boom and bust cycles come, the whole city feels it. And so I'm also thinking about this in terms of the larger city. We are entering into an era where the term drill, baby, drill is echoing everywhere, and that somehow just plowing forward like we always have been is going to solve all the problems. And I think one of the things we've been seeing is we've been pushing off problems, things to later times. Of course, we've had even bigger shocks to our city when Enron, for instance, went bankrupt. It really was a big shock. And I think in some ways, the Enron example is instructive because we see a moment where a company tried to focus on another aspect of the energy production industry, which essentially make it a version of banking and finance, and focus on that, kind of making the exploration and the actual energy production almost secondary to the business. And you saw how that went, right, when that became the primary focus. So it's very tough to shift gears. I mean, I think to your point, Nellie, you're right. We're being asked individually to shift gears, but in this case, we're asking an entire industry, an entire region to shift gears. And it's hard to shift gears when you're told no every turn, whether it's other forms of energy production or decreasing dependence on oil broadly, that somehow that there is no other option, that we only have one option. And I think that only makes us more susceptible to these historic boom and bust cycles. That's going to happen in any kind of industry that's tied to a single product, like especially one that's so sensitive to a war in one part of the world or to an economic depression and unemployment in another part. So that is really something that, one of my neighbors, in fact, said, maybe we should change it. Instead of saying drill, baby, drill, my neighbor Colin said, it should be stable, baby, stable. That's what we're looking for these days. And honestly, just looking around and picking up the news, I wouldn't say just any day, every hour, it feels like there's no stability. And I think the instability that these workers are about to experience from Chevron is the kind of instability all of us are facing.
Okay, good, bad, or ugly. Jessica Brown.
I honestly would agree with both on this. Where my brain is going right now, though, is that our theater actually has Chevron as one of our primary clients for our team building and training. And so, my brain is wondering how that's going to impact the teams, because you have so many people that will be taking on the work of 3, 4, or 5 people. And so how is that going to impact people's mental health? How is it going to impact productivity, communication, all of those things? And so that is exactly what's going through my brain right now. Of course, we can always help with that, but that also means that, there's potential budget cuts for things like that as well. So this also can impact small businesses and, as Raul said, have just a huge impact across Houston.
Up next, a man whose genes say he should have developed Alzheimer's by now hasn't, and a wildlife sanctuary is offering a metaphorical way to feed your exes to the wolves. More ahead on this week's The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly as Houston Matters continues. It's The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly on Houston Matters. Today with Station Theater's Jessica Brown, the University of Houston's Raul Ramos, and Natalie Arsenault from Arsenault International Consulting. Panel, an article published in the journal Nature Medicine this week explores one possible explanation for why a man named Doug Whitney does not have Alzheimer's. As NPR's John Hamilton reported Wednesday, the 75-year-old Whitney carries a mutated version of a gene called presenilin 2. So did his mother and 11 of her 13 siblings, all of whom had Alzheimer's by age 50 and were dead by 60. Whitney, however, has shown no signs of the disease and is the only person known to have resisted the mutation that to date has all but guaranteed it. Scientists digging into why think one possibility may be high levels of what are known as heat shock proteins in Whitney's brain, which might help prevent the spread of a toxic protein that's one of the hallmarks of Alzheimer's, but they really don't know. Whitney's undergone all manner of tests to help scientists figure out just how he's avoided the disease in the hopes that unlocking that could help protect other brains from it. He says he'd love to see that happen while he's still around. A man whose genetic makeup says he should have developed Alzheimer's 25 years ago hasn't, and learning why could be a key to future prevention. Is this good, bad, or ugly? Raul.
Well, obviously it's good for him because he's managed to not suffer from the fate of his family, and I think it should be good for the rest of us, an opportunity to learn something about how the body works, about how these processes undergo development over time. And here's where I think we might be in trouble, because the people and the tools that we need to figure that out are under attack. I'm pretty sure most of the research you're talking about is funded by the National Institutes of Health in one way or another. And if we are putting caps and limits on what can be funded, I think these kinds of episodes or discoveries are going to have limited impact. We need a robust scientific community that can be engaged and already active, so that when these opportunities come up, we can engage it and we can benefit from it. If we shrink that, if we make it less well funded, less robust, as I was saying, they're going to come and go, and we stand to lose out on these benefits. Again, it's good for him, and hopefully it's good for the rest of us if we all understand that we need to support that kind of discovery.
All right. Jessica?
I also think that it's good. As a former caregiver for my parents, I know that was a big challenge for us, is, just making sure that they're okay, and the fact that he's able to remain healthy, that's fantastic. I also love the fact that he is willing to help, because you don't have to do that. He could be the type of person that was like, no, I'm fine, leave me alone. I don't want to be part of this. But the fact that he is willing to help out with the research, which hopefully does remain funded, fingers crossed, I think that it's a really great outlook on that, and a wonderful gift to the world by doing this.
Okay. Natalie?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think it's definitely good for him. I mean, I think we've all seen or heard, if we aren't personally involved with family members, friends who have Alzheimer's or dementia, and you can see how it really ravishes a person's ability and their quality of life. So the fact that he's had been able to avoid that, given the amount of it that exists in his in his family, I think is great. I think it's also, what it also shows to me, and maybe today I'm on the hope train, which is rare. I think we should capture this moment, Craig. It's very rare I'm on the hope train. But what it also tells me, though, is that, a lot of times we look at our family lineage and our genealogy, and we're like, oh, gosh, man, my parents, my grandparents, my so-and-so, they had high blood pressure, they had diabetes. Oh, I'm going to get it, right? And you begin to put yourself into that mindset where you're like, okay, this is the inevitable. I'm just going to have this other disease because it runs in the family, right? Don't get me wrong. That is often the case where you see family members and things. It can be a predictive data point into what can happen to you in the future. But I think this also is hopeful, because someone who has all of that in the family, that's overwhelming, the amount of people in his family who have it. So one would think that, at least by now, right? Maybe he outlived him a little bit, but by now he would start having signs and symptoms, and he's not. So what that tells me is that your DNA is not 100% predictive of what will happen to your health in the future. And so to me, that gives you hope. It also doesn't mean you should ignore all those things in your family, but it gives you some hope.
I think I'm going to add to my previous response here and say, instead of stable baby stable, I'm going to go for hope baby hope. I'm going to jump on the hope train.
I like it. Yes, and also on the hope train, right? So yes, as Raul and Jessica both mentioned, things are under attack from a funding perspective, and what will and will not get funded. And my hope is that even if funding is cut from a federal standpoint, I really want corporations to understand, and I'm saying this not just for this particular thing, but I want them to understand that what the federal government does, you don't have to do. That's the policies for the federal government and where their money will go and what types of initiatives they will support. That doesn't mean as corporations you have to do that too. So you can begin to fund these initiatives that are maybe unfunded based on the federal government. So, I think we as consumers have a responsibility too, where we see a lack happening on the federal side or the state side or the local side, engage in the politics of it all, but also begin demanding more from the places where you put your money at, right? So there's funding that they can do, right, to help. And I don't just mean like the pharmaceutical companies, but I mean, just corporations in general can give grants and all sorts of things to fund initiatives that they find to be important. So let's hope that also becomes a thing as we move forward under kind of the new situation we find ourselves in.
Hope, baby, hope.
Hope, baby, hope.
Finally, panel, a Pennsylvania wildlife sanctuary is helping spurned lovers and other personally wronged individuals get closure by, metaphorically speaking, feeding their exes to the wolves. As ABC's Megan Forrester reported Wednesday in what's turned into a new annual tradition, T&D's Cats of the World in Middleburg, Pennsylvania, is feeding dog treats to the sanctuary's 4 wolves bearing the names of donors' exes. Co-owner Jennifer Maddow tells ABC News, quote, an ex-girlfriend, boyfriend, boss, spouse, roommate, the sky's the limit for an ex, so we'll put their name to that for $5, and then we toss them to the wolves on Valentine's Day. The cookies baked by volunteers are shaped like gingerbread men missing an arm, leg, or head. It's a win-win-win. The wolves get fed, the spurned exes get their revenge, and proceeds help the sanctuary care for more than 200 mammals and birds. Happy Valentine's Day. Now excuse me while we feed you to the wolves. Is this good, bad, or ugly, Jessica?
I love this idea. This is absolutely fantastic. And I say this as someone who has gone to a rage room for being so angry with an individual that I wrote their name on what it was that I was beating up. This is a true story.
Wow. I just want to say I'm sorry.
It was not you, I promise. But
I'm moving back on the table right now.
I don't have the golf club with me. It's okay.
Oh, wow.
But it was so, there was something that really was so therapeutic about it, and you just felt that closure, and I really did feel myself releasing some of the anger that I had with this. One of the improv groups that I work with, we do this in a different way where we improvise a song to try to help people get closure. But I gotta say, I really like the thought of them missing an arm. Like, I love that. That's so clever. The way that they've built up the whole thing. And, I just, there's lots of opportunities out there. Valentine's Day is not just about being happy-go-lucky. There's all sorts of things out there that you can celebrate. Maybe. Yeah.
When I was in college in my dorm and I was frustrated, I'd pull out a hockey stick and a puck and I'd fire slap shots against the door or the wall. I just now realized, I created rage rooms decades before they were around.
You did.
Wow.
Yeah, just like my grandfather invented zip lines when I was 10 years old.
Oh, that seems like a problem too.
Mm-hmm. It went across his pond.
Wow.
Also dangerous.
Yes. Yeah. But I was the first one across.
Craig that's a Midwestern rage room.
Yeah, I suppose
I like
so.
it.
A hockey puck, I know.
All right, good, bad, or ugly, Natalie.
I guess it's good. I don't know. There's all kinds of ways that people pursue closure. Some people, write people's names on things and light them on fire. Some people journal it out. Some people go to rage rooms, right? There's all kinds of ways to do it. And yes, the wolves are getting a win out of it because they get a little cookie snack, which we like. So, I think it's good. Hope train, that's the theme for today. My hope is that in the process of doing these things, whether it's feeding the wolves, rage rooms, journaling, whatever the case may be, hockey puck, that people are actually spending the time to really process through to get the closure. And it's not just an activity, and then they go back to like whatever other detrimental things they're going to do because they don't have the closure. So that's the thing I hope for. And don't wait till Valentine's Day to try to seek the closure. Like, get it, whenever you sense you need it.
Okay, Raul?
I was trying to think of what my baby revenge was going to be. I can't quite come up with the pithy baby X version of this, but I will say that it's definitely good. It's a good way of healing, of closure, of really tapping into those parts that you've been suppressing, that you've been holding down. And I think maybe repair, right? That's what we're ultimately looking for, is how do we repair not only relationships, but I wonder if you could not just put an X, but say some kind of personality trait of your own that you want to, have the wolves eat to kind of like, I've been too short-tempered lately. I need to have the wolves eat my temper, something like that where you can really just feel comfortable with yourself and comfortable with others. I think that's what we're looking for. And I think what we're realizing is that nature is doing this for us. It is our connection with those parts of ourselves that we aren't aware of, that we aren't thinking about. Like, it's good to eat our problems, or at least have the wolves eat our problems.
Yeah.
Metaphor, baby, metaphor.
Oh, I like it. This is a good way to get rid of self-judgment, imposter syndrome.
Oh, there you go.
Those kind of things. Those would be some great things to get rid of. I could totally write that on a plate and hit it with a baseball bat.
Baseball bat. Okay.
I don't deserve to get rid of my imposter syndrome.
Well, you eat you don't want to eat it yourself. You want to let somebody else eat your
let the
problems.
wolves
Yeah,
eat my feelings. I like
exactly.
that. Good idea. Good idea.
It's better to have someone else eat your feelings.
Shove your feelings down someone else's
Yes.
throat. Yes.
Jessica Brown is co-director of Station Theater. Natalie Arsenault is president of Arsenault International Consulting. And Raul Ramos is an associate professor of history at the University of Houston. Jessica, Natalie, Raul, thank you very much.
Thanks, Greg.
Thank you, Greg.